Welcome to Know When Is Safe, a podcast about books, life, and where the truth can be stranger than fiction. I'm your host, Elizabeth Scozzari. Hello, everyone. Happy March. We are wrapping up the month of St. Patrick's Day, and spring is on its way, though it hasn't sprung yet. Has it? Has it already? Is it officially spring and I missed that? I might have. But it is a great segue into one of the things we're going to be talking about today, which is research and how so very important it is to any author, regardless of genre or what you think you know or what you don't. Because if you don't know, you're about to find out. Before we get to the research component of today's very formal podcast, we're also going to be talking about, and I have them over there instead of directly in front of me, which shame on me. We're going to be talking about Pen Pal by J.T. Geissinger, and I do apologize depending on how badly I butchered that. The greater the butcher, the greater the apology. And also Distance by Luna Mason. So those are the two books we're going to mostly be focused on today. And while they are a little similar in some ways, or they have some parallels, they are two different books. One is, I don't even know the best way to describe it or how it's been described online. So I'm just going to go out there and throw out spoiler alert, because when I first picked it up, had no idea that there was a paranormal component to it. I had picked it up in a Barnes & Noble, read the back, immediately wanted it, stuck it on my stack of like 7 other books that I wanted. It was not the one I ended up going with, because I did one of those like close your eyes and blindly pick one out. But it remained on my to be read list. And when I saw on a different like quick reel review, or I guess a review that was done as a reel, however you're supposed to say that, it had mentioned it was a paranormal romance. So there's that aspect of Pen Pal. On the other hand, we have Distance, which is a mafia romance. So there are two different kinds of romance books. They both have a lot of awesome things going for it. I will say, if I had to pit them against each other, which I didn't mean to, but I feel like that's kind of what I did, Pen Pal would definitely be my favorite between the two. But just as like a very clear disclaimer, I already pre-ordered the matching cover of the standalone but related to Distance book that's coming out or being released on, I think it's May 21st. So no matter what it sounds like I have to say about Distance by Luna Mason, I was so hooked in some of these characters that I already bought the second book. Although I do believe that it might have already been released, and maybe I just bought like the pre-release of the new cover. I'm not positive, but I did get the cover that matches mine, which brings me a lot of joy. So breaking it down to the nitty-gritty, we are going to talk about Pen Pal first, and I will stop looking over there. Okay, so to prevent me from looking over there, I just ran and got the book. I just hopped over the chair, plucked it off the shelf. This is Pen Pal by J.T. Geissinger, and this book was fucking amazing. I was not prepared to love it as much as I did. I was not prepared for the amount of plot and the story that just sucks you in. And by the time you get to the end of it, in my opinion, at least this is what happened to me, not only was I so head over heels for the main character, Aiden, or the main male character of Aiden, but I was so aggressively rooting for the couple. I was so entranced in their story. I had so many questions. It is not often that a book, suspense, mystery, romance, or otherwise, keeps me as firmly on my toes as this one did. It put me through the ringer, and it was really, really good. Starting in the beginning, when Kayla receives her first mysterious letter from an unknown person named Dante. She's just buried her husband. She is going through all of those feelings of grief and loss and just trying to establish who you are after something like that. And there's this letter. And originally, I had my back and forth with her because, you know, you want to have patience with people who have just had this big life-changing loss. And then at the same time, like, sometimes you just wanted to slap her upside the head and be like, Kayla, what the fuck are you doing? And so I kind of went back and forth with her a little bit. I liked her. She frustrated me. I was frustrated, but then she would do something endearing. And I had this back and forth with her. But throughout the entire journey of the book, I will say, start to finish, by the time we got to the end, I did really like her a lot more than I was anticipating. Definitely head over heels for Aiden, who's the male main character. Kind of has everything you want in a human being. Well, maybe not everything you want, but definitely a lot of things that, no, you know what? I'm going to stick with my original. I said what I said. A lot to everything you want in a human being. And, you know, one of the things that I really appreciated about him as a character was it's not often, at least in like the romance books that I've read, or, you know, the more dark or the darker romances that I've read, there sometimes isn't always a very clear path to the, what am I trying to say? One of the things that I really appreciated about him was he was very clear in explaining like the rules of consent or the rules of like the sexual games that they played. And there was a lot of like dominance in his specific type of sex. And I loved how that was captured, but not in like a, I'm explaining this as an author because it has to be explained way, but in a very like real conversation between two people. Because if you don't have that conversation in real life, whether you're doing, this whole concept is coming back again later, by the way, but whether you're doing something within like the realm of BDSM, or if you're doing role playing or anything really, like there should always be a conversation about healthy, safe sex, regardless of what that is to you, whether it does fall under a kink or a fetish, or because there is a difference between the two. I was just talking about that with someone the other day. Regardless, even if you're just having missionary sex and like that's all you ever want in life, have a conversation with your partner to make it like a safe, fulfilling thing for both of you. And that is one thing that I really loved and appreciated about this book, because not only did it have amazing storytelling of this woman post-grief figuring out what the fuck is happening with these random letters from prison and a person she doesn't know, but it also has this really mature look on sexual relationships between consenting adults and how exploratory and beautiful and passionate that can be. Also paired with mystery, because there was at least 78, it's an arbitrary number I picked, but like, yeah, I would say like through this much of the book, I wasn't 100% certain of like, who did what? When did this happen? How did that happen? How did we get here? And it wasn't until, and I think that this is like a credit to the author and her amazing writing capabilities, but also her storytelling. Like to write a story like this and have me like kept so much on my toes and this like growing sense of suspense, but also heartbreaking, like, oh my God, or not heartbreaking, heart clenching, like, is this what's gonna happen? I'm not sure. Like, it wasn't until here where I was like, oh my God, this is it. And it was like a jaw-dropping moment. I teared up. I got hot under the collar. It was a fantastic read. I gave it a solid 4 stars. I still like wouldn't say that I like love Kayla as much. It wasn't until closer to the end of the book that I was like, I really do like you a lot, but I do love Aiden hands down. This is a 4-star book, and it is a strong 4. The storytelling, the plot, the mystery, the suspense, the characters, the way the story is told. Yes, I know that's storytelling, but it was the point I wanted to emphasize. The sex, like everything was great. It was really a strong 4 stars for me, and I quite thoroughly enjoyed it. On the other side of that, coming off a book that was so detail-oriented and had to be just to craft this amazing story, we have Distance, part of the Behind the Mask series by Luna Mason. This was a good book 3 stars, confidently gonna say it. It would have been more, except for the fact that there were just like a few parts where details didn't quite line up. Within the first couple of pages, there's like a discrepancy between how a scene is described. There's like this big to-do about one of the characters and one of their fears and where that comes from in childhood trauma. And then the next time it's brought up, it's like water under a bridge, but then it becomes a big deal again. And while I'm not minimizing any of those things, there was just like a couple of facts or like little tidbits or just continuity that like didn't quite line up that pulled me out of the story. And because it had pulled me out of the story, it like brought it down a notch for me. There was also one part of there were 2 transitional parts, or I guess one part that had like a couple of wonky transitions for me that I didn't love. Once you put those things to the side, and then keep in mind that like the first couple of chapters, the chemistry between these characters read more as like, we have chemistry because the author told us we had to, as opposed to when it grew into, no, we have chemistry because we have chemistry. There was like a little bit of that discrepancy when it first started, when the book first started. But once we got past that, these characters have beautiful chemistry. They have a great relationship. I loved it. But again, once we got past the first couple of chapters, I was in for Keller and I was in for Sienna. I was going to call her Raina, but that's the girl of the book I'm currently reading, not this one. But this is Sienna and Keller, and loved them both. To give you an actual synopsis for what this book is about, Keller was a poor underground street fighter who got trapped in the mafia and also became a badass boxer who's on the verge of winning the world title. Is it the world title? Biggest title in boxing, something to that effect. Sienna, on the other hand, is newly single, trying to rebuild her life after a breakup. Not really a big fan of fairy tales or love. However, what happens when she falls, metaphorically and physically, on top of Keller? And I say that because there's this amazing scene within like the first chapter where these characters get introduced to each other and she literally falls and like grabs onto something that's not a table. It is funny. It is hilarious. There were a number of times that I did like laugh really hard reading this book because the characters have witty dialogue. There's a couple of like comic relief things that happen. I found both characters to be relatable. Her more than him in some ways until you get past kind of like those layers. But again, he is a broken man on some level. Growing up poor, being a street fighter, trapped by the mafia. Like, I'm not telling you anything you wouldn't know. And so because he's a bit of a broken man, as his layers fall, you two, in theory, might fall in love with him. Sienna was quite comical. And together, I just thought that they were great. Rough beginning, solid ending, 3-star book. It could not get past like the small discrepancies in the beginning and the fact that their chemistry felt forced early on. But overall, I do recommend it. And again, this is where I said it earlier. As much as I said it's a 3-star book and there were some things that bothered me, it did not bother me enough to pre-order the second book in the Behind the Mask series that's cover design matches this one. And that is... Hold, please. It's like at the very end over here. Detonate. So there are 2 characters in this book that you will see in Detonate, obviously also by Luna Mason. And I am so excited for that. Does it say it in here? Maybe I should have actually read that. Like, that might have been helpful. No, it just says stay tuned for a preview of. So I'm not positive if Detonate is yet released or if it's just the updated cover, but either way I do have it pre-ordered, so I will be having an update on that. But those are the 2 books I read. Again, apparently we're going with like a thematic color over here, but we have Pen Pal, 4 stars, really solid plot, really solid storytelling, great character development, just fucking loved it. It was like nothing I've ever read before. And again, kept me on my toes, really good sex, really good plot, really good characters. Do recommend it. 4-star book. Paranormal romance. We also had Distance. Also good. 3 stars. Good sex. I think I prefer the sex in this one, but again, it's just my opinion. Good sex, funny characters. The dialogue in the very beginning was a little rough between a couple of the characters, but as it continued, it's just the first couple of chapters. But once you get past that, maybe it was just like the first 2, which I guess is the first couple. But once you get past that, it's a cute story. I enjoyed reading it. Obviously, again, I became very invested. I think it was about... Why am I doing this to myself? Okay. So I would say it was somewhere around here, like after this, that I became very invested in these characters and their story. And by the end, I was very much pulling for this entire book to have happened. So I do recommend this one as well. This is a mafia romance. The other one was paranormal. So that is my review on those. Speaking of paranormal romances, even though I finished talking about Distance, which is mafia, and Pen Pal, which is paranormal, was first, I just put a new paranormal short story on my website. The paywall is officially down, so if anyone had ever noticed that like there was a subscription or whatever to short stories, it's gone. In my heart of hearts, I never felt great about it. It was mostly just like a new thing that I could try. And I said, you know what? I'm going to solidify myself as an author. I'm going to put my short stories out there and I'm going to be okay accepting a price for them. And as it turns out, like I'm not. I wrote those short stories because I love writing and because they came to me and I wanted to share them. And so that's what I'm going to do. I am going back to sharing them for free. The only things that you will have to pay for are naughty novellas like Luck Be a Leprechaun, which is behind me, St. Patrick's Day, and the correlating book boxes. So if you are looking forward to celebrating Easter or spring and you want some goodies like some socks and some carrot bookmarks, that one's crocheted. I do have a laminated one, plus lots of other exciting toys. But also, like, there's some Easter eggs and some other goodies in my spring box, as I'm calling it for now. It is available for pre-order. I am getting sidetracked here, but let me just make my pitch while I feel confident and comfortable about it. Because it would make a great Mother's Day present. Like, I have friends who are in their 30s, are moms, are badass moms, and are exhausted because it's a full-time job, and most of those women still have full-time jobs on top of being moms. So for those women who need a release, maybe just need a nice little relaxation or a present that reminds them like, hey, you're doing great, I want to treat you to something, and who like a little smut, because the Easter one, oofa, like that was a little sapphic, a little subtle, a little sexy. The Easter one is basically, if I remember the percentages correctly, like 50% plot, 50% sex. So just throwing it out there. But yes, my book boxes and my self-published novellas, like those will be paid for or need to be paid for. But the short stories I write and put on my website are going to go back to being free. When I had my old website, there was at any given time, because I would pull some periodically to rework them or do other things with them, between 215 and 250 again at any given time. Right now I have probably less than 30% of those on my new website just because I'm manually pulling them and putting them online. So go check those out, elizabethscozzari.com. The newest one isn't necessarily a new story, but it is new to my website, it's up there with a couple of revenge tales, which I guess does tie into our mafia story right here, because there is revenge. Ufa is their revenge. But those are new and available on my website. And other than that, I don't know, part of me keeps circling back to this, like, there's been a lot of book talk drama lately, specifically with authors who are not representing different races, different cultures, different, even different socioeconomic, like, brackets correctly, as well as people who are grossly misrepresenting different kinds of kinks or role play and disguising something really bad as like a form of kink or role play. And like those two things are very different. I'm not going to talk about it in depth. Like, I'm sure if you've been on Book Talk or Google it, like, you can figure it out. But there was a lot of things about this situation that bothered me, but the common denominator between that vile and gross, disgusting book that was written, which should never have been written, and does a lot more harm and zero good for anyone, but the commonality seems to be this lack of research and a lack of integrity that goes with it. That author specifically had said, no, it's not this really bad, vile, disgusting thing. That I would never write a book about that. It's this form of role play. And like, it's not. Even if she really believed that, you could tell that like she didn't do any of the research associated with that, because those are two very different things. This is a crime. This is offensive. This is vile. This is bad. Over here, what you're claiming it to be, which is consenting actions between grown-ass adults who have conversations and understand role play, like, those are two different worlds. Those are two different things. And I saw it in a couple of other things that have come up about people who have characters who don't look like them, or who are making characters ambiguous to like be inclusive without actually doing any of the work. And I think at the end of the day, what we all need to realize is that we have our lived experience, and unless we actively ask and listen and learn and immerse ourselves, I think I was trying to say submerge, but like delve into what other cultures and people and standpoints and viewpoints are, we're not going to learn, and we're also not going to be able to develop great characters. I mean, I'm going to use a silly example because, one, it makes me chuckle, and two, I can stand on this ground because it's me. I am the example here. Like, I'm Italian American from New Jersey. That's where I grew up. And my grandmother is off the boat Italian. My mom and my uncles are first generation. And my grandmother will hit you with a wooden spoon if you tell her that sauce is gravy. It's not to her. But if you were to Google what do the majority of Italian Americans call sauce, tomato sauce in New Jersey, I'm sure as shit there'd be articles that come up that say gravy. And it's just one of those things that, like, okay, it's a silly example, but we have to do the research. We have to look at what we're doing. We have to look at what we're presenting. We have to make sure we understand what the role play that we're writing about in a book is actually like. If we're not doing it ourselves, we need to do the research. If I am not, I don't know, a Dominican woman, then I should not write about Dominican women unless I call the ones in my lives and be like, hey, tell me about your experience. Tell me about this. Tell me about your culture. Immerse me in it. Help me understand. Give me a point of view that is not my own, because I only know my lived experience. Now, there are things that I can write about that I've experienced firsthand. Being a white woman, check. Growing up in a socioeconomic status that, I don't know, I'm trying to politely call myself poor. I grew up poor. I didn't know I was poor until I was an adult because my mother's an amazing human being. But, like, we lived under the poverty line. I didn't know that until I got older. But, like, I can write about that. I can write about traumatic memories and experiences. I can write about a lot of different things. But again, I can't write about being a Dominican woman or a Puerto Rican woman. Like, and I would love to, because some of the strongest women I know happen to be both of those things. But like, I just think that there are so many missed opportunities when we don't research things with integrity or don't do the research and don't put in the work. The book that I'm reading now is, it's so fucking funny. It's so good. It's, I Accidentally Summoned a Demon Boyfriend by Jessica Cage. And it is so good so far. I'm like, I think 75% done with it. I chose to record this instead of finish reading it, but I'm definitely excited to talk to you about it next episode. But there's a line in there specifically about writers doing research and how one maybe didn't do all the research necessary for this one thing they were talking about, but it was captured in the book, and the way Jessica Cage wrote it was so funny and it's so good. But I digress. It's just like, it's so imperative to do your research, because I never want to misrepresent somebody else's culture or misrepresent somebody else the same way I don't want people to misrepresent who I am as a person. Now, granted, I'm out of my fucking mind and I really do like pumpkin spice, so like I laugh at that. And I don't know if anyone else has ever seen him on TikTok. I'm sure someone has, because I think he's like super popular. But someone sent him to me recently, White Women Ain't Scared of Shit. And it's the lady that lets the wolf into her house. I've actually not gotten the wolf in the house, but I have gone to get a wolf because I thought it wasn't a wolf. It was a fox. I went to go get a fox with mange because I thought it was someone's lost dog, because they had been talking about a lost dog and it fit the description, and he looked like he just needed a hug and a bath. Like, I went outside to go and track him down. I sent a picture of him to my friend. My friend's like, Elizabeth, don't fucking touch it. It's a wolf with mange. So like, I there are some stereotypes that are true and funny, and like, that's okay. But it's not okay when we don't do the research, when we take things out of context, and especially when what this woman did, take vile, disgusting, illegal criminal behavior that's actually really fucking bad and dangerous and hurtful, and say, oh, it's a kink, and call it a day. My last point, mostly because my computer's about to die and I don't know where my charger is, way to be a productive podcaster. But someone else said it on TikTok, and I have to find the creator who actually said it so I can list her below. But there is a massive difference between dark romance and shit that's real bad in real life. And I think the example she used was, there in the past couple of years had been a murderer who had been arrested, in jail, mugshot, the whole 9 yards. And I don't remember if they had been convicted or not. But she had said, stop swooning over him. He is not your, like, because people were saying, oh my God, he's so hot, I love him, he's like my dark romance daddy, and blah, blah, blah. And she made the point that, like, no, those are two separate things. Dark romance novels, real life bad people, two separate things. And it's good when we educate each other and push back on things that are dangerous, because murderers are not meant to be idolized. They're not heroes. They're people who have killed other people. In fiction, in books about the mafia and romance or paranormal romance, like, these are different. These are fiction. We can recognize that there's a difference between the fictitious world and the real world we live in. So it is so imperative. Do your research, be educated, ask questions, have grace with people, because sometimes people don't know what they don't know, and if they're willing to learn and they're willing to acknowledge their mistakes, that is different. So take it on a case-by-case basis, but keep in mind, like, do your best. Do your best as a person, as a writer, as a reader, and just, enjoy some books. I don't know. I know for a fact that when I start getting really cranky in my life, if the answer isn't chocolate, coffee, or getting laid, actually, I think that's it. Sometimes sleep. Like, I didn't sleep a lot last week. I think I actually got more sleep last night than I did in like the past 2 or 3 nights combined. So sleep, have a coffee, have a chocolate. I say coffee, but coffee or tea. Get laid. Buy my book box. You know what? I will end on a hard promotional note. If you are angry all the time and you need to relax, buy my book box. We got some teas, some toys, some little bit of everything to make you feel happy inside. So on that note, happy belated St. Patrick's Day. let's get ready for Easter, which is a pagan holiday. And we'll talk all about it next month because I did my research. So, bye everyone! Thank you so much for listening to No One Is Safe. This podcast means so much to me. If you've enjoyed it, please consider liking, subscribing, sharing, and leaving a review wherever you listen to your podcast. For more content or more information on me, please follow my Instagram page at Elizabeth Scozzari Author and check out my website, elizabethscozzari.com. Thank you so much again, and go out and have a wonderful day. See you next week.